Hello, and welcome back to Autistic After Hours. I'm your host, Ashra, and today we're going to be talking about neutral things that I've noticed about myself as an autistic person. Before we get into the episode, quick reminder to follow Autistic After Hours on Instagram. I post original content on there every week, and I'm actually going to be posting on there a lot more frequently soon, just general videos about my experiences, so be sure to follow me on there if you want to see more of my content. Also, be sure to follow wherever you're listening, whether that is on Spotify, Apple, or YouTube. It helps me out a lot. What inspired me to want to talk about this topic is I often see people in autism content creation talking about their experiences as either strengths or struggles, and it kind of pushed me to try and think about the more neutral aspects of my identity as an autistic person and things that I just notice about myself that if I wanted to, I could probably frame as a strength or a struggle, but also I could view them neutrally as just parts of who I am. So I wanted to talk about some things that I've noticed as strong parts of my identity and personality as an autistic person that I don't feel like I need to categorize as either good, bad, strength, or struggle, just neutral things about me as an autistic person. The first thing is that I rely really heavily on external things for self-regulation. And this largely has to do with like my safe things or things like my routine. I rely a lot on external factors to guide my behavior and keep me on track and keep me feeling present and regulated. Things like having access to watch my safe show is huge for my regulation. Being able to feel safe and consistent in my environment, having my surroundings be the same every day, being in a stable, safe feeling place where I can just regulate myself every single day. My apartment, it feels very regulating to me. The furniture, everything being the same, being stable is highly regulating and important for my functioning. Having a routine is a huge part of this, like doing certain things every single day that keep me present and keep me grounded are so important to me as an autistic person. Now, I do want to say that I don't have ADHD, and I wonder how this works for people that are autistic and ADHD, because I know for myself, the need and reliance on routine is very easy for me to maintain and also extremely important and regulating for me. But I imagine having ADHD changes this a lot for people. So I would love to hear in the comments how this is for you if you are ADHD. But for me as an autistic person, something that I just notice about myself is how important external things are for my regulation, including my routine. And this is why when I'm not home, when I'm traveling, when I don't have access to my things, or when external things change that affect my day-to-day life, it is so hugely dysregulating for me, and it makes me feel like I can't be present. So having my external situation stay stable is so important for me in my life. Something else I notice about myself as an autistic person, and again, I'm viewing this neutrally, is that I tend to really like categorizing things. When I learn about things, when I take in information, my brain loves finding patterns and categorizing things in order to store that information and make sense of it. It's just an interesting part of how my brain works. It is something that I notice about myself all the time, is that I really like concrete details. I really like patterns and being able to categorize information. And I think this is also why special interests are such a fun thing for myself and for a lot of autistic people, because it gives you sort of an outlet to really engage in this kind of information processing and storing, which I think a lot of autistic people really like doing. Another neutral thing about me is that my special interest is fragrances. I really love learning about fragrances, and I don't really talk about it in my content creation. I can definitely talk about it more if you guys want me to, but I love learning about perfumes and notes and perfumery in general. It's been my special interest for a few years now. Another neutral thing about me as an autistic person is that I'm really introverted. And again, this is completely not like a good or a bad thing, not a strength or a struggle. It's literally just a neutral statement about me. I'm very introverted. I feel that my energy is drained very quickly from being around people in general. and my energy is replenished when I'm able to spend time alone or with a safe person or with my cat and just engage in my regulatory things like my safe show or my special interest. I am highly introverted, and for a long time, I actually thought of this as a bad thing. I felt like I did not want to be introverted. I really wanted to be like an outgoing person. And I realized that was just me trying to compensate for my social struggles and trying to compensate for my struggles that come with socializing as an autistic person, when in reality, though those things are very real and exist within me, at the same time, I also am just an introverted person. And yes, some of this is probably related to being autistic, but some of it is also probably just my personality, like who I am as an individual, like how my energy feels inside of my body. And I feel really drained most of the time when I'm around too many people or when I'm around people for too long. And so now I try to view it as a neutral thing. It's just like a thing about me. I'm introverted and I take that into account, and I make a lot of space for myself to have alone time and to process things because of my introversion. Something else I want to note really quick, off topic, is that being introverted does not mean you're shy. And I find this to be a really common misconception, is that when people say that they're introverted, they think that they're saying that the person is shy, but that is not necessarily the case. Of course it can be, but not every introverted person is shy. I'm actually really not shy. I just don't like to do a lot of social things because it really drains me. Being introverted or extroverted is about how your energy transfers and how you receive energy from other people. So you can be introverted and be very talkative. You can be introverted and have tons of friends. You can be introverted and be the life of the party. Being introverted doesn't mean you're shy. Another neutral fact about me is that I have a comparatively slow processing speed. And when I say comparatively, I mean compared to other domains of my functioning. This is something that was revealed during my autism assessment. They found that I performed within normal range for most things. However, there were a few exceptions with higher performance and lower performance, one being processing speed. I also have a very strong ability to categorize information in my mind, and I also view this as neutral. It's not necessarily a strength or a struggle depending on the context. Like, it can be either of those things, and so it's really context dependent. But neutrally speaking, I have a very strong memory and a slow processing speed, which is a really interesting scenario because people kind of assume that because I have a slow processing speed, it means that I'm like not listening, not engaged, or that I'm like not interested, or that I'm not taking the information in. And so people are then sometimes surprised by how well I do remember things. The other interesting thing about this is because I have a slow processing speed, sometimes people will tell me things, but I won't remember them because I was processing something else while they were saying it to me. And so it's like a fluke. Like, it makes it seem like in some instances I don't have a good memory. However, I actually have a very good memory. It's just sometimes impacted in different ways by the slower processing speed. Yeah, that's just an interesting thing about my brain, and I found it very interesting during the assessment when I saw that, because it felt so validating to learn that information about myself because it explained so much. But yeah, that is just a neutral fact about me, is that I have a very good memory and I have a comparatively slow processing speed. Another neutral fact about me is that I'm very sound sensitive. And this is neutral because, again, all of these things are context dependent and can be viewed in different ways depending on the context of the situation. So I'm calling it neutral because in and of itself, it is a neutral statement. It's not necessarily good and not necessarily bad. And having sound sensitivity has been a part of my life for my entire life. I always felt like things were too loud. I always felt like I needed to cover my ears. And I also always have had a unique relationship with sound, where some sounds are like really, really good to me and some sounds are really, really bad. And I think this is because of the way that I take in auditory input. I am very aware of the auditory things in my environment. Because of that, I even sleep with earplugs every single night because I will be constantly bothered by tiny little sounds that other people can't even hear. Another neutral fact about me is that I am autistic. That is a neutral fact, and I want to emphasize that because I really like the idea of it just being seen as something neutral. It doesn't mean that it doesn't transfer information. Like when I tell someone I'm autistic, that should tell them something about me. Like they should take that information to mean something. But I like the idea of over time, hopefully as the neurodiversity movement continues and grows and awareness and acceptance continues and grows, I hope that at some point it can just be viewed as like, okay, I know this person's autistic. That's not necessarily a strength or a struggle. That's not a deficit or a superiority. That is a fact about them that I can use to better support them and understand them. And so being neutral doesn't mean that it doesn't give you information. It means that it's not necessarily seen as one thing or another thing. It's just information. Another neutral fact about my autistic experience is that I'm very, very emotional, yet at the same time, I have a very hard time understanding my emotions. And this is interesting because I will often be feeling a lot of overwhelming emotion, but I won't exactly know what that emotion is or what it's coming from. But I am very emotional and I feel things very strongly. And I have a hard time identifying what those things are, and it's something that I have to dedicate extra time to in my day-to-day life. I have been using an oracle deck to try and help me with this because I find that having like a prompt or a sort of starting off point to try and figure out what I'm feeling is really helpful, as opposed to just trying to like dig into myself and figure out what's going on. So I've been using an oracle deck to kind of prompt my intuition into figuring out what I'm feeling when I am feeling so much that it's overwhelming and I can't figure out what's going on. That's everything I could think of right now. I really just wanted to make a sort of light episode this week. I am feeling pretty burnt out right now, so that is why I didn't really want to talk about anything heavy. I didn't really want to talk about anything that I'm like struggling with, because I am struggling right now and there's just a lot going on in my life. And so I wanted to just kind of neutrally talk about things that I experience without having to label them as good or bad, just letting them exist as they are. So those are some things about me as an autistic person, things that I'm trying to view as neutral. And I think overall, the broader message of this episode is that, to me, I think a huge part of the neurodiversity movement is to neutralize a lot of the language and vocabulary around disability and neurodivergence. And I want to also reiterate that that doesn't mean stripping away the fact that you may be talking about a disability. It doesn't mean stripping away the transfer of knowledge and information that comes with disclosing a diagnosis or anything like that. Telling someone you're autistic should still mean something. It's just that taking away the view of it being like a superiority or a deficit is important, and that means neutralizing the information, because then that gives you individuality and it gives more of an opportunity for individualized support and acknowledgement. And that is really important. And so I want to end this episode by giving you a kind of prompt to think about the neutral parts of your identity as an autistic person. What are things that maybe you've been viewing as struggles or strengths when maybe there is a way of viewing it more neutrally? And maybe that's not helpful for you, and that's okay too. Maybe it's only helpful in the realm of struggles. Also, maybe it's only helpful when it comes to certain things, and that's okay. But for me, seeing things as neutral is a way of approaching them more honestly sometimes, and approaching them more open-minded. When I view something immediately as good or bad, sometimes that hinders my ability to accommodate for myself. It sometimes hinders my ability to take a broader, more open-minded approach to the situation. And I think that is another reason why viewing things neutrally is sometimes helpful, because it can help you to sometimes better accommodate for yourself, to see things from a more bird's eye perspective where you can see more options. And so if you want to, you can try thinking about this for yourself. Thank you so much for being here and for listening. As always, remember, autistic adults exist. We deserve awareness, support, community, and acceptance. And I'm so grateful that you're here. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.